Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at brevant.com/wins.
And welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Scott Varilek of Kooima Varilek. We're going to close out the week here with cattle, corn, and soybeans, all to the plus side, hogs mostly lower. And Scott, thanks for being with me. Hard to believe, but we're going to have a higher weekly closes here in both live and feeder cattle futures, despite the fact that we had that limit down move on Monday. So I guess the key is can we build on this now?
Hard to really wrap your mind around how wild that week just was, but I think we all kind of feel it, right? I mean, that's some pretty big head fakes that we're seeing. So impressive that we were able to fight that off. So I think Lexington plant being the reason that we had to break that hard early, we can look at that first. So that plant's going to close in the end of January. And so what has happened? I know there's a couple of large corporates that have already made the shift. They're just going to switch over to North Platte, working on some deals there. So we had a new plant that was coming online, something new and shiny that wasn't named by a big four. Now suddenly they've got some inventory and they're going to be able to get that going and get the slaughter to where it needed to be, because it was such a hard time for a new plant to start when we're in record tight numbers. And all we've heard about is this tight supply over the last 2 years. And so it's going to help them out. So I think that's been able to soften the blow that we've seen of normally if plant closes, we're in trouble for a while, not just this quick turnaround one day down and then we're thinking about higher. So pretty impressive. We were able to do that.
Yeah, so you work through the plant closure, you work through the increase in Brazilian beef tariffs by 40% that you and I talked about last week. Do you think that the news from USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins that maybe it was going to be a staggered reopening of the Mexican border also maybe gave the bulls a little bit of reassurance or not?
Yes, it's going to be a staggered open. And possibly just looking at one port to start. I think that at least finally answers some of the questions that we've had is, are we just going to open this thing up, or how's it going to happen? Is it going to be gradual? When's it going to be? We still don't know the when, but we do know that it will be staggered. So I think that's just a little bit of confidence there. And all the things you heard were, yay, American beef producers, and you feel better after watching it. I've watched enough politicians to know that, yeah, you're always still a little bit nervous anyway, but it felt good, that they're on our side. They're aware of the situation. And it's just unfortunate that politics has this much pull in the market right now. I mean, that's been a lot of the uncertainty, and the reason we've broke is a lot of these political stories. And that's really the last hurdle. We've got over the tariffs. And now, we didn't really see the closing of plant coming, but now that Mexican border is the last thing that we're kind of waiting. And at least this puts just a little bit of clarity in the bucket. We're nowhere near full on that bucket, but hey, a staggered open. Okay, we got something to think about, something for the market to pencil in regarding that situation. We're not just going to send 1 million head straight across, is what she said. And that was comforting in itself right there.
So it was end of the month. We were really oversold. So we've been up the last 3 days. So was this just end of the month short covering activity? Or do you think from a technical standpoint, now that we've had a higher weekly close, have we put in a bottom and can we build on it?
I wish there was a little bit more certainty around it. I mean, we guess month end, I think that was all. It felt a little bit backseat to me. I mean, there's so many other stories, wrapped up in this market with the cash, or that we'll talk about that next, I'm sure. But you've got 3 days recovery after that spike lower. And the only thing that makes me nervous is sometimes that's how markets can kind of recover, or is in 3-day fashions and then kind of settle off a little bit. But there's some things to like about it, just the sheer size that we broke in this whole market, and our long-term monthly charts, those uptrend lines are still in place. We're still long-term on an uptrend kind of market. These short-term charts look very loosey-goosey and up and down, but so 3 sharp days recovery. I think early on in the week, we'll start to decide, is there any power behind this, or are funds looking to get back in because some of those long-term trends are not. So I think these last 3 days being up is a great sign, but right away next week, looking for a little direction here.
Yeah. The other thing that you thought may have played into this, we had the CME servers, which were down prior to the opening today, and you had light volume anyways because of the holiday. Was that, I mean, did it make it easier for us to move the market higher as a result of that? Or were the algorithm traders not participating today?
I just wondered if maybe some of these computer traders, some of these algorithms were not trading. There was computer issues, so they stayed out of it. So some of that trade might have been, off the books today. They did not enter into the markets today. Monday, likely they're back in full force, but just noticing that volume and how easy it was to push the market because there was no setbacks once it started to rally. I mean, it chopped a little bit, stayed higher, but chopped for the first 30 minutes. But after that, it just kept grinding higher, and not even thinking about setting back. So it felt like it was pretty easy for whoever wanted to push it higher to do so. It just never got met with any corrections, and the bids and offers wide all day long. So could be some of that computer issue in there.
Scott, what was impressive about the rally the last couple of days is it was in light of the fact that we had cash trade $5 to $15 lower early in the week. Now, here on Friday, we did see a little bit of an improvement in cash trade in the South, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a long week for cash, but and you sum it up, $5 to $15 lower. I mean, what a wide range of cash that we had. And from being limit down Monday, the first trade, all of a sudden, okay, somebody in the north took 208 already. It's like, okay, that's going to be lower, surely lower, that 5 to 7 lower. And then there was some follow through. There was some more 208. Then we start trading Tuesday and we're up on Wednesday. And then all of a sudden we're getting 210. That's happening. Some people were going to stay and ask 210. Well, they got it. So that felt pretty good. We've got, a situation in the north. I think we're not feeling very current. Our weights, these steer weights that are going out 1,800 pounds and up is normal. It's happening up and down the road. So you've got some producers that are fighting it. They missed out on the high cash and they so they keep going. We got cheaper cost of gains and feeder prices are high. So I'll just keep feeding what I got. So we're not feeling very current right here in the north. Some might say otherwise, but I would disagree. Maybe some of this weather is going to play a little bit of a factor in that, but the Packer has a little bit of leverage right now. And then behind this, we've got yearlings that absolutely do not work. Our 240 to 260 break evens, those are coming. These cattle that we're selling now still make money. So this is our last round of cattle that make good money. So we're maybe a little, okay with selling at some of these prices, but will we just keep fighting it and make them big later? But the cash today was, the South was able to get some 215 early in the week. And then the market was already quite a bit higher, but we did get some 220. Those rumors started circulating that there was some 220 in Kansas, and heard it from enough people that sure must have happened. So that was a nice shot in the arm to say, hey, okay, so suddenly we're $5 higher just in a couple of days from what we were just on Wednesday for cash. So nice way to finish the week there with that little cash bump.
Yeah, let's hope that cattle producers can start getting some of that leverage back from the Packer. All right, the hog market, we had 3 days up this week, and then today we kind of set back. But does it feel like that market is trying to turn the corner and trying to bottom?
I do feel like it's trying to change the trend. It's been just a trend lower, grinding into December, and being low can be what happens in the hogs, but it's trying to change that direction as it's found some volatility and it's trying to put in a bottom here. There's some things that you like about the hog market. For one, our disease, last year we had such big issues and large death losses across a lot of these finishing barns and everywhere in the hog industry last year, for that matter, and starting to see that again. The stories are coming back, fighting some disease issues, and it's depressing when you've got a large hog and you're having to pull them out to the pile and in numbers. So that's rearing its head again. We remember what happened last year. So that disease scare is starting to get back into the market. I'm hearing it from the production sector. So we can't ignore that. And then I think the other thing is just, the cutout's been performing pretty well. I think it's holding its own. It's been able to put a little bit on. So those two factors, I think, are trying to change this direction on the hog market from this grinding lower trade that it's at.
For sure. So corn and soybeans ended higher here on Friday. We're going to have higher weekly closes, but today's action, was it just fund short covering or buying ended the month here, or was this a little bit of a demand push, especially since we got 11.5 million bushels of China soybean sales confirmed?
It felt strong, and I think it is led by some of that demand news. And when we start talking about decent exports and talking about sales to China, that's the news we've been waiting for, we've been looking for in the grain. So just seeing that confirmation that we're getting some sales is, for me, what's pushed this market a little bit higher today. And it feels good. That's what the market needed to be fed. We challenged the bottom side of the range and then quickly kind of crawled back up. So we're still kind of range trading. It's a little bit wider range than what we normally do, but we're still in it, and it's going to need some more of that demand news or some dry weather in Brazil, some issues down there, if it's going to break out of the top side.
Well, sometimes if you start a new month, you get new money in from the funds. And so as long as we're feeding the bull, is it likely that, we could start seeing that new money come in to support corn and soybeans here in December?
I think we could, because we've got markets that, like I said, are just kind of laying flat, ready for an opportunity. And if you start to get some stories wrapped up in some of these grain markets, the funds will notice, they'll jump in. The funds are already long soybeans or short corn. Maybe it gives them just a little bit of a boost to try to, push those soybeans out of the top side. And that's probably the market that's going to need to be the leader here if it's going to do that. So I think it has the ability to do it. We'll find out.
All right. Thanks. Scott Varilek joining us with Kooima Varilek. That is Markets Now.
You were right.
You were right.
You were right.
Well, you were right. When you choose your seed brand, there's winning, and then there's...
You were right. Should have gone with Brevant seeds.
When you choose Brevant seeds, you don't just win. You get to be right. Don't just win. Win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/win to get started.